Today, we're going to chat about arts and crafts magic while I craft my junk journal grimoire. An important preface that I will probably get tired of saying, and others will undoubtedly get tired of hearing. I am not a teacher, I am not a guru, I do not hold all of life or the occult secrets, and I do not claim to. These are just some fun ideas and things that I personally do that really work for me, and some ideas that I'm really excited to try but haven't yet. It is always important to try things out for yourself and experiment with what actually works for you and your practice. I hope that you're able to find some inspiration, or at the very least that it's interesting to hear about. There are 7 main topics I'm going to cover in this video. Correspondences, why would you do an arts and crafts spell, arts and crafts magic for the broom closet, aspects and applications of art magic, vision, mood board, digital collage magic, art magic for divination, and working with spirits in arts and crafts magic. There is definitely going to be some overlap with stuff, but I want to try to keep it as organized as possible to make it easier to understand, so I hope that I have achieved that here. This is obviously not an extensive list of topics surrounding arts and crafts magic, and I am not giving exhaustive lists of examples of anything here, but it's a good jumping off point. I would like to make many more videos on the subject as it is a passion of mine, so if there's an aspect of art magic that I have not covered that you would want to hear about, or if there's something I talked about here that you want to hear more about, leave me a comment below and I will definitely look into it and do my best to make some more content about that. The very first thing to discuss with any kind of arts and crafts magic, in my opinion, is correspondences and symbolism. My opinion across all aspects of magic is that it is going to be most potent and powerful for you if you tap into your own personal associations. So my first recommendation, if you are walking down the Art Witch path, is that you should form your own list of correspondences. For me, I'm trying to let it happen as organically as possible as things come up and as I form relationships with different spirits and experiment. This is a lifelong journey as our experiences shape who we are day to day. Things change regularly, so try to update your personal correspondence list on a semi-regular basis. When it comes to things that naturally have spirits, i.e. herbs, plants, trees, animals, meditating with the spirit is, in my opinion and experience, the best way to go about this process. I will have a few videos on spirit work from other creators linked in the description. Plus, if you have any very specific memories with herbs or animals, that will definitely tie in along with what you learn from the spirit. For example, I grew up having reptiles all the time. My brother had like 8 lizards and 2 snakes, and I love them. I think snakes are super sweet and have good memories of them. I also grew up collecting their sheds. For me, I would associate snakes very positively with my childhood and with transformation, and therefore have a lot of excitement at the idea of working with snake spirits and with that iconography and symbolism. But if you have trauma involving snakes or just never got to know any snakes, you might think they're creepy or scary or just not like them, and so it might be difficult or uncomfortable for you to associate them with positive transformation. In that case, my opinion is that you shouldn't force yourself. There are plenty of other animals that go through metamorphosis and therefore represent transformation. A few examples are frogs, salamanders, and butterflies. You could also work with plants. For example, butterfly pea flowers change color when exposed to citrus and can also be used in workings for transformation. If you want to work with mythical iconography, a phoenix could be included. The point is, there are many suitable options for any given situation, intention, etc. And it's all about experimenting and finding out what works for you, your practice, and that specific spell. And that might take a few attempts. You might fail a few times, and that's okay. It's all about the process and the journey of learning. It's also important to note that when working with spirits of animals and plants, there is the spirit of, let's say, the rabbit that is overarching. And then each specific rabbit has its own spirit as well. So if you want to work with the spirit of a particular plant, animal, etc., keep that in mind. I want to note that I have thus far only had a lot of experience working with the overarching spirits of plants and animals, not the specific ones related to an individual plant or animal. So I can't really speak from personal experience on that, only what I know from other people. I have found most overarching spirits to be fairly open to a working relationship, but I have heard people who work with bones and the spirits of those specific animal bones say that sometimes they just don't want to work with you. So that is something to keep in mind. No spirit has to work with you, so just fucking be respectful and give offerings. For other things like colors, lean into what they make you feel, what memories they bring up, maybe the people in your life you associate with them, things like that. For example, my fiance's favorite color is purple, so I heavily associate that color with them and therefore with romantic love. I also associate purple with peace because it makes me think of lavender, which I associate with Loki, who makes me feel incredibly safe and calm. There are likely going to be many layers to your personal associations, lean into that. Some possible categories to work with in correspondence related to art magic: colors, animals, auditory, i.e. sounds or music, herbs, the elements, planets, and astrology. I have some ideas for how you can incorporate different correspondences into your arts and crafts magic, but I would love to hear any ideas you have, either in inspiration from this video or in general how you do it. Please leave a comment with any ideas or suggestions. A note: when using natural fibers in any fiber arts, you can also consider the correspondences of those animals or plants, i.e. sheep, alpaca, silk, bamboo, cotton, etc. If you work with any animal spirit whose wool or fur can be used as yarn, and you want to do a working that involves them, try to find that specific yarn, i.e. if you work with a rabbit spirit, find Angora rabbit yarn. Some ways to incorporate color correspondences. This one will be the most obvious, and there's not a ton that I can add to it. But for example, you can pick colors that you associate with the working you're doing, and use those colors in the art piece. You can wear clothing of certain related colors while doing the arts and crafts. You can specifically select implements, pens, pencils, needles, etc. with handles of related colors. There's definitely a lot more you can do with color, but to me it is just the least interesting part of arts and crafts magic, so I don't have much more to say about it. Sorry. Some ways to incorporate animal correspondences. Working with the animal spirit. Evoking or invoking it, and or asking for its assistance in the spell. Learn about how that animal operates in the mundane world and connect that to life lessons. Take those things and make art from the concepts. Working from your associations of an animal, incorporate its imagery in relevant art magic workings. For example, I could work with snake imagery for transformation that has to do with my inner child and with trauma, because snakes remind me of my childhood, and that time of my life was super traumatic. If you are able to collect hair, fur, scales, etc., you could use those as a kind of brush to paint with, or you can knit with the fiber. You could also add them with glue or tape onto a working. Really any piece of the animal, as long as it is ethically sourced and sanitary. Some ways to incorporate auditory correspondences. I want to note that this idea is inspired by Kellyanne Maddox, my mentor. There isn't a specific video that I can put in the link where she talks about it at length, but it is something that she regularly talks about on her YouTube. Basically, the idea is making playlists for various witchy intentions. So you can make a playlist that aligns with the energy in general. For example, playlists that evoke feelings of anger or passion, a love song playlist, etc., depending on a general vibe that you like to do in spell work. Or you can make a playlist specifically for that spell and listen to it while you're doing that arts and crafts spell. Some ways to incorporate herbal correspondences. Using oils to anoint pens, pencils, paintbrushes, sewing or knitting needles, crochet hook, or any other similar implement. Using oils to anoint thread or yarn. Drinking certain tea while doing your arts and crafts magic. Keep art tools in a box or jar filled with corresponding charged herbs, either for that specific art spell or for creative inspiration in general. I personally would use orange for creative inspiration, but that's me. You can also make ink, paint, or dye from herbs and enchant that. And finally, calling on a plant spirit and asking for their aid. I want to add a note here that when using magical oils, of course, do as you will, do as you please, all of that. I personally feel that it's going to be most effective if you've made it yourself. Of course, there are shops you can buy oils. You know, if that's what you want to do, then sure, fair enough. However, it's cheaper and honestly magically better if you make it yourself. I think personally, as with most things, like when you do your own spell work, when you make your own oils, especially because we all have very specific associations with things. Same as bind runes. You don't want someone else making you a bind rune. You don't want someone else making you an oil. You want to make it yourself because you associate things very specifically and things fit into your practice in a specific way. Not that there can't be oils made by someone else that are incredibly effective, but overall, it'll be more effective when you make it yourself. And that goes for pretty much anything. That's my opinion. Obviously, I don't feel that way about every single thing in all of magical practice, but at least when it comes to things like oils and any kind of spell. If you're a magical practitioner, do the magic yourself. Okay, rant over. Some ways to incorporate the elements. Of course, working with the colors that you associate with the elements is a very simple way to add their energies. And depending on what kind of craft that you're doing, you can relate that to a different element. Definitely take some time to think about what element you personally feel each kind of craft you do relates to, but these are some of my own personal thoughts and beliefs about it. For water, painting in general, but especially watercolor painting, for obvious reasons. For earth, knitting or crocheting, or really any fabric or fiber related craft, to me this is because they tend to take a longer time to complete, and this reminds me of the process of a plant starting as a seed and slowly growing bigger. But especially if you're doing the fiber craft with a natural or plant fiber such as cotton or bamboo. For air, singing, writing, poetry, and for fire, dancing, and also pottery. I associate pottery with earth, fire, and water due to the various parts that are involved in doing pottery, but for some reason in my brain, the element of fire is what I'm most closely associated with. You'd think it'd be earth maybe because of the clay, but no, fire is really in there for me. So those are just some ideas. Of course, take some time to figure out for yourself what you think about how the elements can relate to different crafts. You can use specific kinds of waters like moon, sun, river, thunder, or Thor's water, etc. You can use dirt to consecrate tools and or make a kind of mud paint with dirt, or add it to a powder that you blow on the working or otherwise incorporate into the working. You can incorporate candles into the process of arts and crafting. These can be just for the ambiance, just for the light, or you can make what Kellyanne Maddox calls cheerleader candles to light while working on whatever craft you're working on to help motivate you and or bring creative inspiration. I will hopefully be able to link a video where she talks about these. You can use wind to cleanse the items involved in the working. Take some time to dive deep into what the elements mean for you. Maybe make a spread in your grimoire on this, and you can use it to reference while doing art magic to see what elements you want to work with. You can use that alongside the writings that you've done about what elements relate to what crafts. This is just a way to further personalize your practice. For example, this is a simplified idea of what the elements mean to me. Earth, matters of the body, slow, grounded, patience, and the imagery of roots/trees growing. I relate the rune Berkana and the suit of pentacles to earth. For air, matters of the mind, quick short bursts, the wind, cleansing, and spirits. I relate the runes Anzus and Tiwas and the suit of swords to air. Water, matters of the heart, emotions, healing, cleansing. I relate Lagos and Isa and the suit of cups to water. Fire, matters of passion, anger, sex, and love, destruction. I relate the runes Thurisas and Kenaz and the suit of wands to fire. Some ways to incorporate planetary or astrological correspondences. Some people may be offended by my grouping these two together, but I am not overly familiar with either and still getting to know them, so I don't want to speak on what I don't know. I also personally work with them in a more simultaneous way, so it makes more sense for my brain to group them together. So I hope I am not offending anybody by doing so. A great way to work with the planets and astrology is to focus on spell timing. You can either do spell work by the day of the week or by the hour to work with the planets in this way. There are planetary hour calculators that you can find on Google that figure it out for you based on where in the world you are. Every day of the week is ruled by a different planet. You can work spells based on the sign that the sun is currently in or what sign the moon is in. And yeah, just another way to go by timing, which is the same as how you do it with any kind of spell, really. I am very new to planetary magic and not at all a ceremonial magician. So again, I'm not going to speak too much on it, but I will link some fantastic videos in the description that talk about planetary magic in detail, specifically Ivy Corvus's planetary magic playlist, which I highly recommend. You can invoke or evoke the planets and or the spirits related to the planets for your arts and crafts magic. You can get to know what the planets mean to you and make artwork based on that. And of course, you can get to know what the different astrological signs mean to you and make artwork based on that as well. I personally plan on eventually knitting a sweater for every planet/day of the week that I can wear when working on related spells and when I do planetary magic. So if that sounds inspiring to you, you could also try that. I do plan on making a video about this when I eventually get to this point. Moving on to symbolism. This is a very short list of symbols you can work with. Sigils or bind runes that you make yourself, the runes, tarot cards, Wiccan symbols if they speak to you, like the pentacle, wand, chalice, etc., alchemical symbols, archetypal figures, and of course, any set of symbols that is used within the tradition you work with. No matter what symbol system you choose to work with, there's going to be a lot of different ways you can include them in arts and crafts magic, and these are just a few ideas. You could draw them on yourself while you do the arts and crafts. You can underpaint the symbols on canvas, draw them with your finger over any art project, use an oil to do the same. For archetypal figures, you can get deep into what that archetype means for you and then make art from that inspiration. Or you can invoke these archetypal figures and then do the arts and crafts. You can do mixed media art and involve actual tarot cards or runes. A note: if you have tarot decks that are pretty but you no longer energetically connect with them, and don't use them for divination, but you still don't want to get rid of them, don't just let them gather dust. Repurpose them for decoration, art magic, or tarot card spells. Things love to have a purpose, and they love to be used, and it's a damn shame for a beautiful deck to gather dust. Here is an example of layering all of these correspondences and symbolism together. This is a spell that I am currently working on. I, of course, will not be sharing every single detail, but this is the outline. I wanted to do a spell for emotional healing. To be more specific, I want to create balance and stability within my journey of emotional healing. So I personally chose to do this in a knitting spell. And specifically, I decided to knit socks. When it comes to knitting spells, I personally prefer simple patterns so that I can more easily focus on adding the energies and intentions. I picked a light blue yarn, as this is the color I associate with emotional healing. To make them extra fuzzy and soft, I'm holding this yarn with a light blue mohair as well. I decided to work with the rune Berkana for this spell, not just because it relates to the element of earth, but also because it is about nurturing and healing. I started this spell on a Monday, which is the day of the moon, and specifically, I did this on a Monday when the moon was in Cancer. Both of these are great for emotions and emotional healing. I evoked the frog spirit and asked it to assist in this spell. To start, I poured energy into the various different tools that would be used and did a very informal consecration with them. I chanted urus over the needles and told them they will be directing the energy of this spell. When I got to the yarn, I drew Berkana with my finger over both balls of yarn and chanted Berkana and breathed life into the yarn. I also wrote my incantation with Berkana in mind. I personally love to watch TV while I knit, spell or no, so for the auditory correspondence here, I chose to watch my favorite shows, for example, Bones, while knitting. I rewatch the same shows and movies over and over as a coping strategy, mostly subconscious, and so they feel very soothing to me. Once I finish the knitting, I will lay the socks out on my altar, chant the incantation over some lavender and breathe life into it, and then sprinkle this over the socks. I will leave them to soak up this energy until the following Monday. I will evoke the frog again and do a final energy working to fuel this spell, and then the spell will be complete. I will wear these whenever I do shadow work or any kind of emotional healing work, during therapy, psychiatry, etc., as a boost to my work of emotional healing. Why an arts and crafts spell? Creative expression is magical in and of itself. Art makes you feel something. It evokes emotion. And you can add even more magic to that by adding a few things to your arts and crafts. Doing repetitive motions like knitting or crocheting not only alters our states of consciousness, but also helps our brain heal. Ivy Corvus has made a very long and extensive video on meditation and one on altered states of consciousness, and I highly recommend that you go give those a watch if you haven't already. They will be linked in the description. She has a whole section about how you can accommodate different neurodivergences in meditation, and specifically she talks about ADHD. As someone with ADHD, first of all, I am obsessed with the accessibility of this video, which is so rare in the witchcraft community. Both Ivy Corvus and Kellyanne Maddox are incredible resources for me as a neurodivergent witch. I have not personally ever found either of them to be ableist. All their content is very inclusive in terms of disability and neurodivergence. She talks about how repetitive motions alter our states of consciousness, and there are many different ways to go about this. If you struggle with traditional meditation, go watch Ivy's video all about meditation and try out some different methods that involve more movement, like knitting or crocheting. Another reason why you should try an arts and crafts spell that ties in with the first point is that in working with creative expression and symbolism, we are in a direct dialogue with our subconscious minds. Our subconscious minds speak to us through symbolism, so try speaking back. Wearable or displayable magic can be more inconspicuous or discreet if you're in the broom closet, and I will get more into that later. If you're lower income like me, it can be a better financial choice to do a spell in the form of socks that you actually need or decor for your home. 2 birds, 1 stone, rather than buying herbs to put in a jar spell that will just get thrown away. Not that this is a bad thing. Do spells however they work best for you. But if you're low income, it could be worth looking into arts and crafts magic as well as kitchen witchery to do magic, especially because you can recycle a lot of things into craft supplies, like soda tubs. I will definitely talk about kitchen witchery in a future video, but for now, back to the craft talk. My final point is that it is just genuinely fun to do arts and crafts magic. And to me, the most important aspect of my witchcraft is enjoyment. Here are some reasons I think arts and crafts magic is perfect for you if you are in the broom closet. It's perfectly normal to knit or crochet. It's perfectly normal for you to drink a beverage while doing so, and it is perfectly normal for you to wear the items you've made. No one is thinking that it's a spell. Same goes for painting and then displaying said painting, or writing a song and then singing it. Art is natural, and in almost every case, no one will bat an eye. There are so many ways to incorporate more magic into your arts and crafts in a discreet way. Here are some ideas. You can either underpaint symbols, sigils, or bind runes on your canvas or paper with paint, or use an oil depending on what kinds of painting you do. Experiment with what works best for different kinds of paint and styles of artwork. For an even more more discreet way, you could even just trace the bind rune, sigil, or symbol over the canvas or paper with your finger alone. For sewing, you can use enchanted oils to anoint the thread. If you hand sew and work with linen thread, specifically, you could make an enchanted oil and then make a really hard salve for waxing that thread. Of course, using color correspondence is a great way to get magic into your arts and crafts in a discreet way. However, I want to make an important note that to be as discreet as possible and lend to the wearability of any spelled garments you make, it is worthwhile to think about your personal color palette. What colors do you normally wear? What styles? What patterns? If you want it to seamlessly blend into your normal wardrobe, it could help to focus on making sure that the colors don't stand out. So if you never wear pink but want to do a love magic spell, and most people work with, say, pink for love magic, you may think you have to knit a pink sweater, but that's not really the case. What kind of love magic are you doing? For self-love, it might be better to go with your favorite color, as it has a strong tie to you. For friendship love magic, you may want to use the favorite color of the friend in question, or a color that you associate with the kind of friendship you're wanting, and that goes for romantic love magic as well. Are you wanting passion? Red could be good. Are you wanting a grounded love? Green or brown could work beautifully. Do you want to be protected in love? You could use black. If you're doing love divination magic, you could try purple. But most importantly, use whatever colors you most associate with what it is you're spelling for it. These are just some suggestions based on how I work with color. And color isn't everything. This might be a hot take, but in my opinion, when it comes to arts and crafts and really any kind of magic, you can use whatever colors you like and whatever colors you want, as long as it makes sense to you and you like it. There are so many other layers that you can use for association, so try not to get too caught up in overthinking one aspect of it. You can even buy wool wash that is a scent you relate to the intention of the spell you're doing to add a scent correspondence that would be a very discreet way to add more magic. If you're a musician, you can consecrate or otherwise spell the instrument you make music with or the case that holds it. You can decorate the instrument or the case for general purpose fortification or spell boosting, or for a very specific intention that you're casting for. You can also, of course, write songs with hidden meanings and sing or play them as the vehicle for the spell. Another very discreet way of doing arts and crafts magic is to make a playlist, like I mentioned before, and listen to that playlist as you work on the arts and crafts. Not only could this help your brain get in the right mood, but it is fairly normal for people to be otherwise entertained during a crafting session. Same applies for shows and movies. If you're spelling for confidence, you could watch a show with a strong, confident protagonist that you resonate with, or a marathon of movies with the same. If you're doing romantic love magic, you could watch a marathon of rom-coms that give you the warm, fuzzy romantic feelings you want in your life. Some might disagree with me here, and that is totally okay, but I don't focus on the knitting with undivided attention for the whole duration of knitting a spelled garment. I do the initial spell, I make an incantation or affirmation to say before picking up the knitting, as well as something to visualize related to the spell. And I do that. Then I just knit and watch or do whatever the fuck else I want while working on it. It works well for me. I do tend to only watch or listen to things that are positive, comforting, or have a good emotional connotation for me while I work on the knitting spell. But other than that, I don't give a fuck. For me, it comes back to the point that enjoyment is the most important part of my practice. I spent 3 months in total working on a knitting spell, and if I had had to do that in silence while doing nothing but focusing on the knitting, I would have fucking hated it. Aspects and applications of art magic. There are endless ways to infuse arts and crafts with magic, but here are a few more ideas for you. You can consecrate your tools and implements: pens, pencils, knitting or sewing needles, crochet or latch hooks, etc. There are endless ways to consecrate. Pick your favorite or the most relevant to what you're doing. You can consecrate with the elements, with special oils, or any other correspondences you like. Sometimes all the extras feel a little too woo-woo for me, and I literally just tell the item, your job is this now, and that is the whole consecration. To consecrate is the act of making or declaring something as sacred. So whatever feels sacred to you, do that. You can make a song, poem, or any kind of art piece as an offering to your ancestors or any spirits or deities you work with. You can make a wearable garment for working with ancestors, spirits, or deities, one for the task as a whole, or if you really want to get into it, one for each spirit you work with, or just specific ones if you work with them a lot. For example, my grandma left me all of her fiber art stuff when she died, and I found an unfinished cardigan. I have started working with her spirit and plan on finishing that cardigan as a devotional act to her, and so that I can wear it while doing spirit work with her. You can knit or otherwise create wearable garments to boost other spell work. I have a shawl that I knitted with the intention to connect me with and strengthen my inner power. I wear it when I'm doing spell work and when I just need a boost. I'm currently working on a pair of socks that I'm knitting for emotional healing that I will wear whenever I do any spell work related to that intention and for when I go to therapy and psychiatry. You can do this for so many different intentions. For friends and loved ones who are open to the witchy stuff, you can make wearable or decorative magic for them, i.e. a protective sweater for your partner, an art piece to bring good luck to a friend or family member, etc. For me, creative pursuits are a coping strategy. Knitting in particular really helps me cope with anxiety. There's something soothing about the repetitive motions. Also, as a neurodivergent person, I need things to do with my hands, fidgets or stims, and knitting really helps with this. I personally feel that accommodating ourselves and improving our mental health is an extremely magical thing to do in and of itself. But adding a bit of a boost by spelling a collage to bring happiness and peace when you look at it, or knitting a blanket to alleviate symptoms of depression or make you feel safe in those scary mental health moments can go a long way in fortifying those things. And this is definitely a very practical application of arts and crafts magic for me personally. Working with poppets. Not only can you make your own poppet, which isn't entirely necessary, but I do believe it adds an extra oomph to any poppet work you do, pretty much the same way I feel about oils. Someone else can make it for you, but it is better if you make it yourself. But it's also a fun project. And then from there, you can also make stuff for your poppet. For example, you could knit a small blanket or sew a small quilt with the intentions of protection. And then when you need extra protection and you want to use your poppet, wrap your poppet in the protective blanket. You could also make little clothes for your poppet that represent different things. If you struggle with insomnia and want to do some magic about that, you could make pajamas for your poppet and spell them to help you with sleep. When you're ready to go to bed, you could put those pajamas on your poppet to help you sleep. Or if you need more energy in the day, you could make some clothes and pour in the intention of vital energy and put the clothes on your poppet when you wake up. These are just a few examples, but there's truly so much you could do with arts and crafts magic and your poppet. Vision mood board digital collage magic. One of my coven mates does magical mood boards, and I asked permission to share some of their thoughts. In their exact words, I wanted to experiment with mood boards, not to bypass my feelings or gaslight myself, but on the contrary, to help me stop resisting and fighting my states, to find peace and acceptance and ultimately use these difficult phrases for good/productively and make the most of them. Beautiful words, by the way. Holy shit. Wow. Amazing. Incredible. 10 out of 10. A good place to start is to figure out what you want your vision or mood board to be about. You can use vision board magic for manifestation, accountability, to affect your mood, accept emotions, transform thought patterns and processes, and if nothing else, as beautiful, inspiring decoration. Then it's all about picking symbolism that relates to your desired outcome. If you are wanting to make a vision board for making healthier choices, you could print out some pictures of fruits and vegetables, someone walking, a water bottle, anything that relates to the habits you want to implement, goals you want to achieve, or your desired outcomes. Arrange them on a board in a way that speaks to you. And then the fun part. I recommend watching both of Ivy Corvus's videos about vision boards, which will be linked below. I think the best part about physical vision boards is how versatile they are and how creative you can get with them. You can add herbs, powders, oils, sigils, bind runes, enchanted paint or ink, bits of cloth. You could take photographs yourself and print them and use those. You can add bodily fluids, for example, spit or blood, literally anything. You could spell a candle and have it going while you work on the vision board. And then at the end, you could use some of that dripping wax to seal different things to the board, like herbs. My coven and I are planning on doing a vision board party inspired by that Ivy Corvus video this coming new year. I may or may not share bits and pieces and will at the very least share my personal vision board. I've personally been slowly taking my time to figure out what themes I want this vision board to cover and have been making a list. Probably a week before we plan to do our vision board party, I will revise the list, figure out related goals and habits that will help me achieve these desired results, and keep that in my grimoire to reference throughout the following year. I will start looking through magazines and finding pictures on Pinterest to print out for my vision board, as well as gather the herbs and oils I want to include and grab a candle to have lit during the crafting session. I will probably keep these all on my altar for the week to start soaking up some sacred energies. I will come up with some words of power related to the different goals and have them written down so that I can chant them while doing certain parts, as well as make a bind rune to help me manifest all the desires. If you do a physical vision board, you can keep that around your house as decoration, or if you're making a digital one, you can make it your phone, laptop, or tablet, home, or lock screen. Art magic for divination. I have done this a few times where I asked a question and then I freeform draw or used watercolor pencils to find my answer. I chose colors that related to the question and used a few different ones. After drawing with the watercolor pencils, I sprayed with water and then ended up dunking it in a bucket of water because the spraying wasn't working well enough, and then just let it dry. Once it was dry, I interpreted all of the shapes that I saw in relation to my question. This is a great way to more intuitively read, and I highly recommend giving it a try. You could just do this with a pen though. There is no need to get too fancy with it if that doesn't speak to you. The point is the shapes and the kind of intuitive process. Another great thing to do, which I am currently working on myself, is to make your own divinatory system. You could make a tarot deck, an oracle deck, set of charms, your own runes, any divinatory system you like. I am currently working on an oracle deck, which I may show off and talk about in a future video, but I'm doing a collage style mixed media kind of thing. I'm making them on an old deck of playing cards. I painted the fronts of the cards, cut out some things from a bunch of magazines, glued them to the cards, and right now I'm working on painting the backs. I worked intuitively, and it wasn't until after I had glued all of the things on all of the cards that a story emerged. One that I'm very excited to try divining with when this project is finished. I seriously recommend trying this out, if for no other reason than it has been so much fun. Working with spirits for arts and crafts. UPG here. For me and my relationship with Loki, they love my artsy and craftiness, so that definitely plays into how I go about arts and crafts magic. They are not necessarily a part of every single arts and crafts spell, but for example, during almost the entire time I worked on this junk journal grimoire, I was evoking them every time I worked on it. I wore a bracelet I had made for them most of the time and lit a candle for them. Loki just likes to be involved in my crafting, and I like to involve them. For clarity, in this context, spirit refers to any non-corporeal being. Ancestors, deities, elementals, demons, angels, cardinal spirits, the dead, animals, plants, trees, or any other non-physical or non-human energy or entity that you work with. These are some of the ways to incorporate spirits into arts and crafts magic. Invoke or evoke spirits, singular or plural, while doing arts and crafts magic. Use their symbols or iconography. Petition them for assistance with the intention that the spell is aimed at. Make any form of art as an offering or devotional act for a spirit. These are all of my main tips, tricks, ideas, etc. for art magic. I sincerely hope that they have been helpful and or inspiring in some way. I would love to hear your thoughts in response to some of these ideas, so don't hesitate to comment below. I would love to start some meaningful conversations about art magic with you.